presidency describes as disgruntled elements. There was a similar rumor in 2017 when the president had an extended medical stay in London despite experiencing a series of military coups. There is clearly anxiety over a possible destruction of 22 years of democratic governance in the country, the longest democratic dispensation since independence. Not a few have expressed concerns over the implication of political and democratic disruption in Nigeria and impact on other African nations. What are the challenges of democracy in Africa? How can government liberalize democratic institutions who are the beneficiaries of a flawed political and democratic system in Africa? Has democracy failed the African people? What does a politically stable continent look like? What is the benefit, or what is inspiring xenophobia in South Africa against other Africans? Joining us on the program today is Professor Emeka Aniagolu. Professor Aniagolu is a professor of political science and history. He taught at Ohio Wesleyan University, Delaware, Ohio, and the Ohio State University, Columbus, for a total period of 36 years. He is the author of 18 works of fiction and non-fiction, the latest being Rainbow Nation. We'll be talking about that as well in the course of this program. Professor Emeka Aniagolu is the second son of late Justice of the Supreme Court of Nigeria, Justice Anthony Aniagolu. He is currently the Executive Director of Research, Innovation and Development for this Etrasio and Abuja-based corporation. But before we go to the main discussion of the day, let us quickly tell you what is happening in the United Kingdom. A lot is happening in the UK, especially in its political space. People across different cities and regions in the UK have been voting in elections holding in England, Scotland, and Wales in the last 24 hours. The elections are set to change the political space in the UK and probably the Union since the 2019 general election. In Scotland, voters are electing 129 members of the Scottish Parliament, while voters in Wales are casting their votes for 60 members of the Wales Senate. In England, 143 local councils have been up for election, and people in Hartlepool just this morning voted the Conservative in a by-election that saw the control of the constituency. Hartlepool, originally held by Labour since it was created in 1974, now moved to the Conservatives. A very big blow for the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, who is now facing criticism from members of the party for the loss. Votes are being cast for 13 directly elected mayors in England. As we speak, 39 police and crime commissioners in England and Wales. We hope to bring you updates of these elections in our next program and what the outcome, especially importantly the Scottish election, what it may mean for the United Kingdom and the Union, as the SNP, the Scottish National Party, are on possible course of winning a majority, a win that may lead to possible Scotland's independence referendum, the second referendum, well, in recent time, votes ahead of 2023. But then let us take a short break now, and then we'll come back when we'll be doing an evaluation of Africa's democracy and xenophobia in South Africa with our guest, Professor Emeka Aniagolu. Don't go away, it's going to be an interesting one today. The world has become more connected than ever before. Every continent, color, race, language, and religion, even government, move towards common goals. We now live in a global village. Here on this program, we'll bring you global issues to shape our world.
Government can do a lot with tax revenues collected for health and education.
The role of the European Union is to accompany a partner, that is Nigeria, in offering our lessons learned to see whether together we can improve that situation.
The emphasis on education, on vocational training, on the development of entrepreneurship is absolutely critical to its democracy.
The Nigerian government, we would ask them to follow up the investigations that we have had, the evidence that we have gathered, and ultimately we made a number of recommendations.
As we travel the world, we explore these issues of international and diplomatic relevance. Indeed, the global agenda that determine our national and common interests. With me, Tunde Alabi, live on AIT. All right, welcome back and this is still Global Matters, a program where we'll take a look at global issues happening around the world. As I said earlier on, elections are currently ongoing in the United Kingdom, in England, in Scotland, and in Wales. More importantly, our eyes are on the elections happening in Scotland, where the SNP are most likely to have the majority, which may trigger a referendum, an independence referendum in 2023. Nicola Sturgeon has said, look, if SNP wins a majority, she may likely call for the second independence referendum in 2023. We're watching, we'll see what is going on. And let's quickly tell you that in Hartlepool, since 1974, Labour has been in charge of that constituency. But just this morning, they lost heavily to the Conservative. Now the Conservative is in charge of Hartlepool in England, and the Labour leader Sir Starmer has come under serious criticism. That's just by the way. We're giving you an update of what is happening in England, probably in the course of this program or next week when we come back. Today on the show, I've got my guest in the studio. I have Professor Emeka here in the studio joining me to look at issues around Africa's democracy and, of course, issues of xenophobia in South Africa. Professor Aniagolu is a professor of political science and history, having taught in the United States of America for a very long period of time, now engaging in services in Nigeria and deploying his intellectual capability to move the country forward. He is an author of a couple of books, including Rainbow Nation, that we'll quickly talk about in the course of this program. Prof, thank you for taking the time to join us this morning. Let's take a look at the issue of political stability in Africa. You are a professor of political science and history. How can we get it right?
Well, I was listening to you going through a short list of a couple of countries having issues. We could spend time just talking about the specific details of each country and providing anecdotal explanations, or as I prefer to do, to look across and look at the main principles that are bedeviling democracy in this part of the world. And one of those principles is the principle of accountability. And accountability is a critical component of democracy, because the whole idea of democracy is that people vote in people to administer the state, the government, on their behalf, and to manage their taxes and so on and so forth for the purpose of the well-being of the population and the nation. So a time comes and must come where the people who have been given that authority have to provide accountability. So one major principle, if violated in democracy, is accountability. The second important one is the business of an electoral system that has integrity. Because if the people that are supposed to vote for the government of the day, their votes are subverted, counts for nothing, then obviously the democracy has been suborned. If they cannot actually cast their votes in confidence, if the votes can be bought, if the electoral system is rigged, and so on and so forth, then a major principle of democracy has been violated. The third part of it is corruption. I mean, you cannot simply be dipping your hand in the national till, taking lion's share of what is meant for developing the country for your own personal use, or a network or a cabal of people making money from the government and simply reading essays to the people about democracy and patriotism and nationalism. It's not going to work. Given
these three that you have listed, accountability.
So sorry to interrupt, but those three things go directly to the question of legitimacy. And without legitimacy, the government, a democratic government, is in trouble. Should be in trouble, because they're not representing the interests of people.
So let's come down home. In Nigeria, which of the three key ingredients of sustainable and legitimate democracy is missing?
I would have to say that all three.
Accountability?
All three are a problem in this
Are
country.
you saying we have elected officials that are not accountable to the people, elected officials that do not have integrity, elected officials that are bedeviled, that are corrupt? What about the electors themselves?
I am saying that the electoral system by which people get to occupy public office in this country has much to be desired in terms of being free and fair. It is not something in dispute. There are people who are in positions today, governors and all of people, that literally bought their way into those positions.
But should we continue to blame the elected officials, people who vie for offices? What about the electors? People who have the rights to go there and vote. Are they people who can be given 1,000 naira, 5,000 naira? People who can be enticed with a bag of rice or two, some Ankara? Would we call Nigerian electors as people of integrity?
I would have to say that there is clear evidence that many of the members of the electorate are clearly easily bribed and so on. But there's a tremendous amount of poverty in this country. There is a joke about an old uncle of mine who said that once upon a time there was a place where they were going to vote, and the man was told, you need to vote for people because of ideas and so on. And the old man is a hungry fellow, he has nothing. And he told him, listen, all these theories you're talking about, I'm going to vote where the bag of rice is.
Should hunger and what Nigeria is going through now, insecurity, be the basis? If I'm hungry and somebody comes to me with 5,000 naira, will the 5,000 feed me for the next 4 years? Should hunger, insecurity, incompetence, and other vices be the basis, a trigger that should push the electorates into voting in or voting out?
In an ideal situation, I totally agree with you. If the person is properly educated, that is when I mean educated, I don't mean formal education, informed about his rights, the consequences of his vote, etc. But if you're somebody who can barely read, and you've seen 30 years of government come and go and nothing's made any difference in your life, you're not going to have this sort of idealistic view about we should do the right thing by vote for the right person. Who is the right person? How do you know who the right person is? The second term of the current president of this country, he refused to come and debate his opponents. Where are they going to see where the debate that matters in terms of public policy in their interest? No. Their first reaction is going to be, let me get what I can get out of this fellow now.
Should we in this country and in other democratic climes change, especially in Nigeria, change the discourse from the elected to the electorate?
No.
You spoke about education. Shouldn't we move the discussion now to the electorate becoming people of integrity?
Right, you keep harping on that, but who is going to lead this process? A society needs leaders. As far back as 1983, Chinua Achebe wrote a book called The Trouble with Nigeria. Small little powerful book. And he identified even then that leadership is the core of the problem. And it's not just politicians. They are the primary problem because they are in decision-making positions. But they are not the only ones. Members of the educated elite, myself included, who have a responsibility to do the right thing, whatever position they find themselves, are implicated.
Right, Prof. Because of our time, you are the author of several books, including Rainbow Nation. And you just earlier, a few minutes ago, you spoke about leadership. And in the book, Rainbow Nation, you spoke about your first encounter with racism when you were in the United States. And you were so angry with the level of racism that you encountered especially those that you've heard about South Africa, Africans against Africans, especially South Africans who were helped by other African countries, now developing a kind of xenophobia against those that helped them. Would we blame the leadership? Well, that look, you as a president, shouldn't you control your people? Shouldn't you make them understand that these are your fellow black Africans?
I agree. That is the whole point of the book. But a slight correction in the first introductory remarks. It was after I left Nigeria for the United States that some of the things that were happening to South Africans that Nigeria was already beginning to help with, that made me angry at what they were doing to fellow Africans in South Africa. And I took that anger with me and rage to the United States, and then found, to a large extent, some of the bases out of which that racism grew out historically in the world, in the United States. Now, as far as the responsibility of leadership is concerned, I'm in total agreement with you. The whole point we elect people to lead, to occupy positions of responsibility and decision making, is so that they can make the right decisions on behalf of society. Why else do we hand state power to people if it is not for them to exercise it in the common good? So yes, the leaders of South Africa, the president of South Africa, has a particular responsibility to make sure that immigrants in his country, whether they're Africans or not, are protected equally before the law, to educate the population of South Africa, the ones that don't know about the kind of assistance that other African countries, especially Nigeria, made possible to South Africans, that made it possible for them to gain their freedom. All of that is the responsibility of leadership in a country, just like we were talking about earlier on in Nigeria, with respect to trying to promote and sustain a healthy democratic system.
Right, Prof, in page 145 of your book, you spoke about Fidel Castro's Cuba and the liberation of Southern Africa. What similarity do we have there?
It's not a matter of similarity, it's a matter of the role Fidel Castro's Cuba played in trying to safeguard and further the independence and the anti-colonial effort of the African countries, particularly in this case, Angola, where the Republic of South Africa, in cahoots with Mobutu's Zaire at the time, and the United States, used all manner of insurgents trying to overthrow the MPLA government of Angola. And the Angolan government simply did not have the military wherewithal by itself to withstand those insurgents, and would have been overthrown, even though it was a populist government that was accepted by the majority of Angolan people. So the Cuban government, under Fidel Castro, sent over 25,000 troops to literally help with military equipment and so on, which obviously got from the Soviet Union, of which was his ally at the time, to help with the Angolan government, and literally stopped the overthrow of that government and made possible the independence of Angola.
In your further analysis of xenophobia and South Africa and other African countries, you spoke about the role of the media. You said the media and the xenophobia in South Africa. The media is a powerful tool. Did the media in South Africa help in furthering the cause of xenophobia or reducing the issue of xenophobia?
I don't think one can categorically say that they aided in furthering xenophobia, but they certainly didn't do the opposite, which you just mentioned.
So they're neither here nor there.
Which is exactly. Which, in a way, you could say that a person who sees evil and does nothing about it is actually encouraging the evil by doing nothing about it, especially when they can do something about it, and should have. So what could they have done? They could have shined the light in the audiovisual media, of which you're part, as to what is going on, have programs, bring on people to explain to people, this is not right, this is what this will do to help You can't stereotype an entire nation of people as drug dealers, human traffickers, and so on, and use as an excuse for mobs to swarm them, kill them, and so on and so. They could have done that, but they didn't do that. It is true they didn't go ahead and say, yeah, go kill the Nigerians or go kill the Tanzanians or Ethiopians or Somalis or whoever the case may be. They didn't do that either. So you can fault them for not using their platform for the kind of positive education that might have made a major difference.
Because of my time, what inspired you? What did you intend to achieve with Rainbow Nation?
The objective of any book is to educate and inform. And anybody who is an educator, an academic, would know that when you provide facts and a narrative that is capable of making somebody think, opening up their eyes and their mind, you are making a contribution towards education.
Which would have been of great interest to you, the issue of South Africans attacking and killing Nigerians, or Nigerians being killed in Nigeria by Nigerians, by Islamists, by bandits, by terrorists? Which would have been of great interest?
I don't know about being of great interest. The point of the matter is that the insurgency in Nigeria is a major problem. A lot of people have written about it, other than myself. And those books are available too. And the authors are available. Not many people have written about this in the way I did, in terms of trying to put the searchlight on what is going there and why. That's why I chose to do that.
Your assessment of this government?
Very poor.
You are a political scientist.
Very,
around the world.
My assessment is very poor. Very poor indeed. I must tell you that many times abroad I've been embarrassed by a country as big, complex, full of great intellectuals like our country. And when I see the presidents of much smaller countries holding their own, debating in major circles, I don't see our country anywhere.
President Muhammadu Buhari, you're
sorry.
sitting right in front of me and you're talking to me about issues affecting Nigeria. Tell me straight in 50 seconds what I should do.
The first thing you must do right away is to create an emergency committee and invite some of the finest minds, regardless of which part of the country they come from, and let them map out the best approach for what to do to solve the problems, at least stabilize things in the next 100 days.
Thank you so much, Professor Emeka Aniagolu, a professor of political science, Aniagolu, a professor of political science, taught at Ohio Wesleyan University, Delaware, Ohio, and the Ohio State University in Columbus, for your time on the program. To 36 years, ply your trade in America isn't a joke. We hope you fit very well into Nigeria and the system.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. I hope to bring you back sometime.
Thank you very much.
Soon, and we can look at the entire political space in Africa and indeed Nigeria.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. This is how far we can go on the program today. It's very, very interesting knowing that you're there. It's on a Friday. As you go out this weekend, keep safe and ensure you report any suspicious movement to the security agencies, and sincere appreciation to the entire crew that's made today's program very successful. Thank you so much and enjoy your weekend. Bye.